in the race for Chicago's next mayor. Meanwhile, Emanuel has floated the idea of selling more than $10 billion in pension obligation bonds. We dig into that idea. Jury selection gets underway in earnest in the murder trial of Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke. Plus, a look at the jury selection strategy for both the prosecution and Van Dyke's defense team. A mysterious box of photographs inspires a globe-trotting art show.
You wrote Myra had the baby, but you didn't use an exclamation point.
And are you anxious about exclamation points? You're not alone. Find out the reasons why. All that and more next on Chicago Tonight. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brandis Friedman. No term limits referendum on the November city ballot yet. Eddie Aruza has that story and more of what's making news in Chicago Tonight. Eddie.
Brandis, former Illinois Governor Pat Quinn hits another speed bump in his attempt to have Chicagoans decide whether 2 terms should be the limit for Chicago mayors. A Chicago Board of Elections hearing officer ruled Quinn's proposed binding referendum cannot be added to the November ballot because it already includes 3 advisory referenda, the maximum allowed by state law. Those 3 questions were put on the ballot by the Chicago City Council at the behest of Mayor Emanuel, some believe to block Quinn's efforts. Today's ruling is only a recommendation for the Chicago Board of Elections commissioners, who will decide separately. But however they decide, a court battle is still expected to ensue. U.S. News and World Report is out with its annual rankings of the nation's top universities, and 2 local schools are near the top once again. The University of Chicago is tied for number 3 on the list, behind Princeton and Harvard. That's the same place U of C was on last year's list. Northwestern is in a tie for 10th place. That's up a place from number 11 last year. As for other local schools, the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign comes in at number 46, Loyola Chicago at 89, IIT is at 96, DePaul 119, and UIC 129. According to the report, Northeastern Illinois University graduates students with the least amount of debt among Midwest regional universities and has the 2nd most diverse student population in that same group. Last week, another major college ranker, Forbes, put the University of Chicago at number 18 and Northwestern at 20. And what is Kanye West really up to in Chicago? Over the weekend, the 21-time Grammy-winning rapper tweeted about several Chicago projects he claims to be working on, beginning with plans to restore the long-shuttered Regal Theater on East 79th Street. Its current owner, who bought it out of foreclosure in 2014, has not confirmed that he's working with West or that the rapper is ponying up money for the ongoing restoration. In another tweet, West announced he would be teaching courses at both the Art Institute of Chicago and the American Academy of Art. This afternoon, both schools said, in effect, that it was all news to them. Kanye also tweeted he's opening a Yeezy office here. That's his hugely popular line of apparel and footwear. That one may be true, but he gave no details. As for the weather, mostly clear tonight with a low around 57. Then tomorrow, expect sunny skies and a high around 77. And a reminder that Chicago Tonight is streamed on Facebook via podcast and the PBS video app, as well as online at WTTW.com/Chicago Tonight. Now, Brandis, back to you.
Thanks, Eddie. It's been nearly a week since Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel made the shocking announcement that he won't run for a 3rd term. Chicago Tonight's Amanda Vinicky is here with a survey of the political landscape. So, Amanda, on the heels of the mayor's announcement, it was already a crowded field. We're expecting it to grow more. Where do we stand?
Brandis, I mean, we really may be in danger of spending an entire segment just reading out the names of candidates declared or potential. So for tonight's purposes, I will take you at your word and really go with the absolute latest.
Thank you.
And that is that one former mayor will not try to once again occupy the 5th floor of City Hall. Retiring County Clerk David Orr tells me he thought about it because he cares so much about Chicago, but in the end he decided to stick with his plan to return to the private sector. Just who he'll back, though, he isn't saying. He's got a pack and plans to be involved.
So Orr's out. Any new candidates who are opting in?
Not yet, but the list of maybes has grown. State Representative LaShawn Ford says West Side Black elected officials voted to launch an exploratory committee on his behalf. And City Treasurer Kurt Summers. He launched a new website that appears to be a step toward trying to move up.
So what about some of the other big name, high potential profile candidates whose names have been floated? Are they apparently still on the fence?
Yeah, so I spoke briefly with former U.S. Commerce Secretary Bill Daley. Really briefly, he did not have much to say. He, of course, is the brother of former Mayor Richard M. Daley and son of Richard J. He wouldn't say whether or not he'll run, only that he'll have an answer, quote, shortly. And then Latino leaders have been in talks, and they are expected to meet again this week to potentially coalesce around a Latino candidate. The names mentioned most often, Cook County Board member Chuy Garcia, who lost to Emanuel in a runoff in 2015. He's the biggie. Or could it be retiring Congressman Luis Gutierrez, whose seat in Washington Garcia is expected to fill after the November election? Finally, there's Cook County Board President Toni Preckwinkle, whose political director said in a statement that she is giving serious consideration to running for mayor and will be making an announcement regarding her decision shortly. I was going to say, in regards to Preckwinkle, last but not least, but that isn't actually accurate. Illinois Comptroller Susana Mendoza, Congressman Mike Quigley haven't ruled out runs either, and there could be others who will still give it a shot. Gary Chico, Brendan Riley. The Emanuel news is still pretty raw yet, and one political consultant says it'll take time to shake out.
There is not going to be a front runner in this race, in my opinion, and the time period by which we can sort of judge, I'd say, who's in front is much more 2019 than it is 2018. I think the next few months are a lot of maneuvering, a lot of fundraising, a lot of polls that are flashing around that may not capture the entire field quite yet. So a lot of uncertainty ahead. I think it starts to sort itself out in 2019.
There have been a couple of new polls out, but those really are snapshots and at this point in time don't give much of a picture beyond really name recognition. A couple of points to keep in mind, though. One, we could see a whole lot of musical chairs coming up, particularly if current office holders try for mayor instead. And all of this attention on the mayor's race is taking attention off this year's midterm elections, the race for governor and big competitions for Congress.
Pretty good news for Democrats who have a pretty strong current of voter support behind them right now. But if you were a statewide campaign trying to get some attention to your race, Chicago mayor is now blocking you from getting a lot of media coverage.
Now, Bowen says would-be mayoral candidates do still have time to make up their minds. He guesses they'll have to do so by October in order to get those petitions in by their November deadline.
Lots to look out for, Amanda. Thank you.
Lots of people. Yeah.
Lots of people. And now to Carol Marine and some big numbers facing the city of Chicago. Carol.
Thank you, Brandis. With 8 months left in his final term, Mayor Emanuel has readied himself for a self-professed sprint for the finish line. On that to-do list remains a staggering fiscal problem, the city's more than $28 billion of unfunded pension liabilities. Mayor's floated a plan for knocking this pension debt down by borrowing $10 billion, issuing municipal bonds. The mayor and his chief financial officer, Carol Brown, say the plan will save Chicagoans from future tax hikes, while critics warn the city would be slave to the whims of the stock market and maybe end up in worse trouble. Joining us to discuss this whole idea, 32nd Ward Alderman Scott Waguespack, a frequent critic of the mayor, Ralph Martiri, Executive Director of the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability, and Amanda Cass, Associate Director of the Government Finance Research Center at the University of Illinois, Chicago. We ought to know that we reached out to the mayor's office as well as to the office of Carol Brown. Neither agreed to join us, nor did they recommend any guests who might be here to defend the plan. So let's get started. And shall we start just theoretically, Amanda? Without talking about what is this or what isn't this Chicago plan, what are the advantages or the disadvantages of this kind of operation? What is it exactly first?
Sure. So I think in theory, there's two main reasons why you'd issue a pension obligation bond. The first is for some short-term budgetary relief. It's literally just to kind of free up money in your operating budget that you would otherwise pay the pensions. The second reason is to kind of do an interest rate arbitrage. So you think that you can get a higher interest rate by investing the money than the interest rate you have to pay on the unfunded liabilities for the pension system.
And Ralph, when it comes to advantages, what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages in theory?
So in theory, if you have a proposal like this on the table and you issue some bonds and you put all that money into your pension system, but you issue the bonds at a lower interest cost than what you'd have to pay to your pension systems, and that would be the case here, you save the taxpayer some money up front. Remember, this is not incurring new debt. So let's just use the example of the city. It'd be $10 billion refinanced. Just if you refinance your home, you didn't take out a new mortgage, you replaced your old mortgage with a different mortgage. In this case, the interest rate they would pay on bonds would be lower than the interest rate they owe to any of their pension systems, which range from 7 to 7.5%, depending on the systems. They could probably issue even a taxable bond for somewhere between 3.6 and 5%. The last bond that the city issued was at 3.6%, but it was a mix of taxable and non-taxable.
So that's the plus. What's the minus?
You know, in this case, there's not a significant minus provided, and here's the big provided. They put all the money into the pension system to replace current unfunded liability, and they still make their current contribution as required by law. None of the proceeds from the bond could be used to cover either their contribution, or they should not artificially lower the contribution going forward and front-load savings in an attempt, as Amanda said, to get some budgetary relief. That would be bad public policy. Now, if they did an intelligent reamortization of the debt that lowered long-term costs to taxpayers while still increasing the funded ratio every year of the pension systems, and that increase in the funded ratio, i.e. getting the systems healthier, has to occur while covering all cash flow obligations of the systems to pay benefits to current and future retirees, then they've got something that's good in the short term and long term.
Okay, a lot of ifs there. So Scott Wagisback, you're the alderman here. By the way, are you running for mayor?
Good question. My name is out there. I've been working furiously over the weekend with a lot of other elected officials and talking to the big candidates. So at this time, I'm leaning towards alderman and making sure I get my job done there.
Okay,
Yes.
just had to ask that to get that out of the way.
Thank you.
So you've been in meetings, correct, with Carol Brown, who is leading the charge for the mayor on this, and she's done a PowerPoint presentation. Is that correct?
Well, they did one briefing, and they gave us one 5-page document that didn't have any real information in it. So, and along with that, a Citibank research report that was fairly lengthy. But I think that's something that most of the public has seen now, or at least some of the experts have seen it. Beyond that, we haven't had any communications. We don't have any information. We don't have any of the things that we asked for.
What did you ask for?
Well, I put a letter out to Carol Brown on Friday, and it was basic follow-up to things that we asked for in the meeting. What are the amortization schedules? Is there an early call? All sorts of things involved in setting up a pension obligation bond.
Because this is a very complicated thing to set up.
Oh
right?
gosh, it's only $10 billion. So, you would think that the city would come forward and say, here's all the information that you need to make a good decision. And like has happened over the last decade plus that I've been alderman, you're not getting that information. So I listen very closely to what Ralph says and what Amanda, what they write up to see if you can learn something from past mistakes. In this case, we're repeating mistakes like we did with the parking meter deal where we just don't have the information on the table. So I understand it takes time to get some of that back, but in the one briefing that we had, aldermen were asking questions, some aldermen, and saying, perhaps you could provide us with some of the sensitivities of what could happen if the market went one way or the other if Chicago were in this $10 billion deal. And we haven't seen any response yet.
So Amanda, if you say pension obligation deal, I can say Detroit, Puerto Rico, and Stockton, California. All three of them gone into bankruptcy. Bankruptcies contributed to by this very kind of borrowing, right?
Right, and it's important to note that municipalities in Illinois cannot file for bankruptcy yet, at least. I think the big risk with doing a pension obligation bond is that it only works and makes sense if the investment performance outperforms the interest rate. So for example, if the city pays an interest rate of 5.4%, for the duration of the pension obligation bond, the investment performance of the pension systems has to exceed it for this to actually make sense. And I think, you know, we're at a point right now where it's kind of peak in the market. A lot of people are predicting that there's going to be an economic downturn. So if that happens, I think we're going to have a compounding effect for the city's finances. We'll have this outstanding, very large pension obligation bond, and the finances of the pension systems will tank and will increase future city contributions. So I think it's really risky at this moment, especially since we don't know who the next mayor is going to be, we don't know who the next governor is going to be, and both of those things will impact the future.
So are you sort of negative, not taking a stand, or positive on this?
I would say I'm kind of neutral but leaning negative. Again, I like the alderman, want to see a lot more kind of details about this that I haven't seen.
So Ralph, if I can sense where you're going, you're neutral to positive?
Yeah, that's right. I don't think this is the kind of proposal that could be dismissed out of hand, and it's really something the city has to consider for a number of reasons. And one of those is their pension contribution is increasing by $1 billion in the next 3 years, $1 billion. Their revenue sources at the city level for their corporate fund have been flat after inflation going back 10 years. And they've only had growth in their other revenue sources because they've increased taxes, in particular the property tax. So there's really no clear financial capacity for the city to meet this statutorily required growing pension contribution. Just isn't. The current funded ratios of some of these pension systems are really deplorable. Fire system's only 21% funded. The police system's only 24% funded. Putting this money into the systems right now would bump up the funded ratio across the board to about 50%.
If you knew the rate, and if you knew the term, and if you knew the particulars.
Right, you
correct?
do know the particular. I mean, the alderman is right about that. You absolutely have to have these details in advance. We wouldn't support any pension obligation bond issuance by the city if, in fact, a number of details weren't in place. But let's talk about a market correction just real quickly. You got this $10 billion in the city, so you put it into the pension sums. Let's say it loses $5 billion in value. If you hadn't put it in, you'd have owed that $10 billion. Now you've lost another $5 billion too, so now you owe 15. You're not in a better place, and you're paying higher interest rates.
So, Scott, if you don't do this, what is the alternative?
Well, there's been alternatives proposed for many years, and I heard the mayor come out in one of the interviews and say, as he always does, and as several aldermen that have been his followers for many years, what are your other proposals? What are your other ideas? And we've often given other ideas about expanding the tax base, looking at services, looking at a progressive income tax, which has to go through the state. But the mayor never lifted a finger to do that, never went down to Springfield, never did the job that he should have as mayor to make sure he looked at other revenue sources. And in that Citibank report that we did receive from Carol Brown, it says in there that, yes, you can do this pension obligation bond, but you still need to find other sources of revenue. You can't do this alone.
I see both of you nodding because it's $10 billion, but we're $28 billion in the hole, right?
Right.
So that, I wasn't a math major, but it seems that there is a gap there, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is no clear fiscal capacity of the city to meet this growing pension funding obligation as established by state law. And so it is absolutely the right thing to do to look at additional revenue sources. Sadly, the city's toolkit's pretty limited for what they could do without action in Springfield.
That's correct. Yeah.
And so they do have to go to Springfield. An expansion of the sales tax base to include consumer services, like virtually every other state with a sales tax does, would be great for the city, maybe $300-400 million in new money overnight. But right now, that's not the law. Right now, the city has limited resources. Right now, the city is facing this $1 billion jump in its pension obligation payment, and right now, it just doesn't have the capacity to make it. This is not incurring new debt. I emphasize that. They still owe the same $10 billion. They owe it at a lower interest rate. That saves money.
One of the things that you raised was that this deal is now going to look different to bond houses because Rahm Emanuel is leaving the stage, correct?
Yes.
So what's the psychology there?
I think that's a big question, I think, is whether or not this is even feasible given the uncertainty in the mayoral race. Rahm Emanuel is a known entity. I think that him saying I'm not going to be running for a third term brings a lot of uncertainty. So I think, again, there's a question of what interest rate would the city get if it goes to market with this, and is there an appetite? $10 billion would be the largest pension obligation bond ever issued by a city. It's a huge amount.
In the entire United States, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
But I don't think it, I think he should hold off on it in part because you're not giving the next mayor any options if you do this. You're basically committing them to a plan that comes under the mayor and the taxpayers as well for the next 30 years. But there are other options out there. We just have, well, TIF reform. If you look at how much money goes into TIF every year, it's well over $1 billion right now, but it's, I think David Orr's report this year showed $660 million came into the TIFs. And the council needs to look at these. The council needs to show this to the potential new mayors and say, here's some other options on the table. And we don't get that conversation. We're very focused right now on this pension obligation bond. You know, and it's interesting that Carol Brown didn't even really bring it up. It was actually Michael Sachs in a pension conference that brought it up.
And Michael Sachs is in the financial world and is an advisor to Mayor Emanuel, right?
Sure.
And World Business Chicago and other financial advisors have some component of advising on this. Are there ethical problems you look at, Ralph, when you say who's going to make money here and who's advising here?
You know, I don't know that any ethical problems have been implicated yet because we don't have a bond house. We don't have, right? I mean, you need to know those details. I go back to the alderman's request for details. You know, I think this is the kind of proposal that really needs serious consideration given the city's financial condition and its obligations. I think it needs to have a lot of very detailed hearings. I think every one of the alderman's questions should be answered. You know, but it shouldn't be dismissed out of hand because it could work.
As you raise this, the parking meter deal was supposed to be the last time we didn't have hearings, to Ralph's point. We didn't have time to think about it, that we had sort of speed bumps. Where are the speed bumps?
Well, the speed bumps that we were able to get in over time were debt transparency ordinance and an asset transparency ordinance, but those aren't being adhered to when it comes to bond deals. And it's those kind of things that the aldermen need to take a serious look at and say, let's implement these and force the issue. We don't want to end up like these other cities or you know, Puerto Rico where we've seen that failure. And I agree. If this is a good deal, let's put it out there, let's explain it. That's why somebody should have been here from their office tonight to talk about this issue and defend it, and we don't see them here.
Scott Waguespack, Ralph Martiri, Amanda Cass, thank you very much for being here on Chicago Tonight. Much more ahead, stay with us.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the City Club of Chicago.
Smart people may disagree about what makes a great city. But part of what makes Chicago great is that we don't have to agree. To run a city like ours, a lot of issues come up. The City Club of Chicago is a place to debate those issues and hear from the men and women who shape the policies, lead the industries, and tell the stories that define our city. For the free and open exchange of ideas, the City Club of Chicago.
Still to come on Chicago Tonight. A filmmaker explores race and class at a Chicago area high school. East meets West in an art show that began with a collection of photos found at an estate sale. And why some might have a case of exclamation point anxiety while texting or emailing. But first, jury selection began today in the trial of Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke, accused of murdering teenager Laquan McDonald nearly 4 years ago. Chicago Tonight reporter Matt Masterson, he was in court today and he joins us with the latest. Matt, first, what can you tell us about those first jurors who were selected?
So through the first day of selection, we have 5 jurors who have been seated. That includes 3 women and 2 men. Among them is a stay-at-home mom of 3 young kids, a white woman whose significant other works with the Illinois Department of Family and Children's Services, and an Asian American man who works as a financial analyst. But thus far, there have been no African American men or women who have been seated on the jury. Most of the jurors who were picked today say they're familiar with the case in one way or another, but they believe that they can give Jason Van Dyke a fair trial. Both the special prosecutors and Van Dyke's attorneys used some of their preemptory strikes today to excuse some of the potential jurors based on things like living too close or on the same side of the city as Laquan McDonald's family, or one juror had a pro-police thin blue line bumper sticker on his car.
This process has also been extremely secretive. How are they doing it?
Compared to most trials, yes, it's extremely secretive. Jury selection is typically held in open court, but the judge in this case has been extremely careful about not revealing too much about the identities of these potential jurors. So today, these potential jurors, they're brought into a small room behind closed doors to be interviewed by the judge, defense attorneys, and the special prosecutors. Only a handful of members of the public and reporters, a rotating list of reporters, were brought in to supervise or sit in on this process. So there were no cameras allowed, and the judge actually fined one of Van Dyke's attorneys for slipping up and saying the last name of one of these potential jurors after warning them not to do so.
Any expectation about how long jury selection will take?
Well, picking 5 jurors in one day was a bit of a surprise, given how difficult Van Dyke's attorneys had made it sound that it would be to find some unbiased jurors in this case. They've repeatedly pushed to move this case outside of Cook County, saying that they don't think a fair trial can be held here, given the case's prevalence and the media attention that's been put on it. But the full jury will take 12 main jurors along with 4 alternates, and the court is taking a break from jury selection tomorrow, but if this pace keeps up, it could be finished by either late this week or possibly early next week.
And this could all be for nothing, though, if Van Dyke waives the jury trial and chooses a bench trial.
That's correct. Until the full jury is sworn in, Van Dyke can still opt for a bench trial, which would remove the need for a jury and put this all on the judge in the case, who would decide whether or not Van Dyke is guilty or innocent of the murder, battery, and official misconduct charges against him. But his attorneys thus far have not indicated which way they'll go with that.
Okay, Matt, good to see you in the studio. Thank you for joining us. And as we just heard, 5 people have been seated as jurors on the Van Dyke trial, with another 7 spots to fill. And with that, so many questions still remain. Who will the prosecution and defense teams deem desirable in a pool of about 200 potential jurors? Could seeing protesters on the way into the courthouse affect someone's opinion? And what if a juror has seen the now infamous police dashcam video? What if they haven't? Joining us to discuss jury selection strategy is Alan Turkheimer. He's the founder of Trial Methods, a Chicago-based jury consulting firm. In the past, he's consulted for cases involving the city of Chicago and police-involved shootings. Welcome to Chicago Tonight.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So you were in the courtroom this morning, or the courthouse, excuse me. What was your reaction to what you saw there?
Well, everybody has to indicate what they know, what they've seen, and what's going to happen is, and what happened today was, people understand that you can still have seen that video, you can know about the case, but that won't necessarily get you automatically excluded. So the video of the shooting, the 16 shots, is obviously very potent stuff from anybody's perspective, but not everybody has seen it. But even if somebody has seen that, that doesn't automatically exclude them from getting on this jury. So the judge and the attorneys are going to get at what they feel are attitudes and potential bias, and if they can get past that, then it's up to the attorneys to decide whether or not they want to keep a juror or use a peremptory to get rid of that juror.
What would the right jury be in this case?
So a lot of times it ends up more in the middle, because you have the prosecution. Now, a lot of this is flipped backwards from most cases involving police, but the police as a defendant, the prosecution wants jurors who maybe harbor a little misgivings toward the police. Maybe they've had some incidents with the police. They think that the police don't do what they're supposed to. They think that they maybe use excessive force when they shouldn't. Also, given the video, I think the prosecution is going to look at people who make decisions based on emotion. And when they see that video, they're going to equate that with a guilty verdict. Conversely, if you're the defense, you want people that maybe have some connection to law enforcement, people who think that it's a very dangerous profession, that when you're quote unquote on the job, there's so much at peril, and that it's hard to second guess and play Monday morning quarterbacking. Along with that, given the video, the defense might want people who are more methodical in their decision making. They might take a step back and want context and do some pros and cons before just seeing the video and automatically equating that with a negative result.
And you mentioned it, peremptory strike, for folks who don't know. What is that?
So if somebody cannot be fair and the judge determines that this person comes in with a bias, and we saw some prospective jurors with that today, but if the judge says this juror can be fair, then each side is given 7, in this case, peremptory challenges where they can get rid of a juror and don't have to give a reason whatsoever. So they can think that this doesn't fit the profile they want. They can believe that this person's not going to be fair. They can believe they're going to start out negatively disposed to their case. So they can say, we move this juror, we use a peremptory to strike this juror. We don't think this juror should sit on this case.
The juror questioning, it's been happening in isolation rather than in open court, as you said. What is the benefit to doing it that way? Or how is it different? Why?
Sure. Well, most of the time it's in open court and everybody sees it. It's usually more efficient when everybody sees it, because when you have 12 people in the box and then you have a courtroom packed with potential jurors, they see what the questions are, they see what the process is. There's momentum that gathers. But when you do it one at a time, you have to start completely fresh with every juror. I think one advantage is that the jurors are a little more comfortable if they do have bias, or if they have something that they wouldn't necessarily disclose in open court in front of everybody. They might be a little more comfortable if it's just that juror, the judge, the prosecuting attorneys, and the defense team. So I do think there is an advantage of that, but it does take a lot longer. And so I am somewhat surprised I got through 5 jurors today, because it does take a long time. It's a cumbersome process.
We did just hear Matt Masterson mention that so far no African Americans have been seated on this jury. And of course, it is illegal to strike someone, to use a peremptory strike on the basis of race. Are there proxies that could be used for race, and who's in charge of catching that?
Sure. So if the defense team, and it would probably be the defense team that would try to strike an African American juror, if the prosecution says you're using race to get rid of this juror, then it's up to the defense to say why they're getting rid of this juror that is a race-neutral reason. And courts are pretty lenient with any reason. They can say something to the effect of, well, I don't like how this juror looked at my client. I don't like how they're similarly situated to the family of Laquan McDonald. Anything really can be accepted. It's just they cannot systematically strike African American jurors from the jury.
How concerning is it for potential jurors to see protesters outside?
I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think that they might walk across protesters. So many things are protested in our society today that they might pay attention, they might see. If anything, it just reaffirms that this is a high-profile case and that the stakes are high and emotions are running really high. But I don't think it's going to have any effect on how they look at the evidence in this case or how they make decisions when they get back in the jury room and deliberate.
How do you factor in the impact of the evidence? It's been made very public, the police dash cam video. How do you factor that into jury selection?
I want to get a sense of how a juror is going to react to that. So if, no matter what side you're working for or what side you're on, you want to think, okay, will this juror get past that, or will they look at that video and automatically equate that with a guilty murder verdict? So you really have to delve a little deeply into it. You have to decide. You have to ask questions and ask the potential jurors about some of the attitudes they have about the police, about this case. And then in your mind, you have to listen to the words the jurors use. You have to look at some of their body language. You have to watch how they react and listen to responses to your questioning. And then in your mind, you have to think, how's that going to play out in deliberations? What are they going to say in deliberations? Are they going to be fair? Are they going to be a leader? Are they going to be a follower? Are other jurors going to like this juror? Are they going to look at this juror as a source of authority? Or are they just going to be somebody more middle of the road in the jury? So you really try to anticipate what it's going to look like in deliberations. And certainly that video is going to be a huge factor in terms of what they're looking for and how they're assessing what deliberations are going to look like.
If the defendant does not waive his right to a jury trial and this jury is impaneled, what is the possibility or the likelihood of the jury being sequestered?
I think there's, it doesn't seem like the judge is going to go that route given some of the things that have led up to this. It's always a possibility, and I think some of the responses in the questioning that took place today and then over the next several days, that might factor in. But given the fact that he's already seated 5, or that the sides have seated 5 and the judges accepted it, I'm not sure that they're going to go that route. It's always a possibility, but I think it's going to be the more traditional jury where they're not sequestered and they get to go home to their family at night and come back the next day for another tough day on the job.
All right, Alan Turkheimer of Trial Methods, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And up next, the director of a new docuseries that goes inside a Chicago area high school to examine race relations.
Don't ever miss Chicago Tonight. Subscribe to our podcast to get a daily download of our show delivered to your desktop or mobile device. Go to WTTW.com/Chicago Tonight Podcast and subscribe.
It is an epic yet very personal view of race and class. America to Me is the ongoing 10-part series from Chicago's Cartemquin Films that's currently airing on Starz. It explores a year in the life of Oak Park River Forest High School. Here's a short look.
I don't think people quite understand how life and death this job can be.
And joining us now is Steve James, director of America to Me. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
Your camera crews followed more black students than white students in this series. Was that a conscious decision, or did the black students have more to say about race? How did that come about?
Well, I think it was both. Initially, my conception was that we would follow black and biracial students because Oak Park has a very high number of biracial families in the community. But it was impressed upon me by Shayla Holland, the outgoing assistant principal, at a certain point that you can't relate it or not, because we encounter them at public meetings with parents, at school board meetings, public events. So we did what we could to sort of capture the administration, even though they didn't want to participate.
Did they give you any impression about why they didn't want to participate?
Well, some of the reasons were, and these are totally legitimate reasons, are concern about exploitation of the kids. And that's a totally understandable concern, but I feel like in the body of work that I've done over the years, that's something that we take very seriously, and I don't feel like we have exploited kids, and you can't tell this story without focusing on kids. They also talked a bit about, like, well, couldn't we do scholarship instead of a documentary? Well, there's been a lot of scholarship and studies done of the Oak Park school system for years, and that has not resulted in much real change. So a documentary can do something different.
You would think if this were a school board that were to vote 6-1 to allow a crew like yours to follow students around for the course of a year, that same school board would also be proactive about making change about some of the inequities that people feel they see in that community.
Well, I think the school board, the folks that have been elected to it, ran on equity issues, and they're parents themselves and care about this. That's why they agreed to have the series come in there. And there is efforts being made underway, and there have been for years. I think part of the problem is that when they come up with certain ideas that seem to work, they don't stick with them. An example is they had a program where, and you'll learn about this later in the series, they had a program where they tried to gang together kids of color in AP classes, because one of the complaints from the kids and their parents was that they felt so isolated in those classes, maybe one kid in a class. So they came up with this idea to try to put many of them in the same class, which would make it a more comfortable learning environment. Well, then they got complaints from white parents that their kids weren't getting the advantage of having black kids in their AP classes. And as if that was more important, to have that than it was for the black kids to have a level of comfort in the classes, and so they discontinued the program.
We, well, what can you do? We also have a short clip of a school board meeting. Let's take a look at that.
So when people say, we want this to happen now, some of these things can't happen now. But these conversations move the needle.
The conversations are great. What I'm not understanding, and maybe I'm missing it, is a sense of urgency.
What's been the reaction from the school and the community?
Well, I think the school has, has a new superintendent, and I believe that the making of our series had something to do with the previous superintendent that we filmed against his will leaving. So they have a new superintendent who is, I think, much more assertive, and she has decided to embrace the series and use it as an opportunity to really engage the community as a whole in real conversation and hopefully do more change around these issues. So that's good. I think they're also trying to position themselves as being a different school than they were 3 years ago. That they have solved some of these things, and I think they are a different school, but I think the jury is definitely still out as to whether Oak Park River Forest High School is on the road to really bridging that divide.
Any complaints about how the community has been portrayed?
Well, I think some people feel like we might be being too hard on the school, I think this is a very diverse liberal community that takes enormous pride in its reputation, and so a series like this can be a little bit sobering. A great team of segment directors that worked with me. We each followed kids' stories, and it's a diverse team. They are much younger filmmakers than me, which doesn't hurt when you're following kids. And so that, I think, allowed a kind of bond and trust to develop with the kids and the filmmakers.
Do you think the experience is different for students who are biracial? Is their experience unique or different?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really interesting in this series is that there's not been enough focus in documentary filmmaking in general on kids who are biracial. And so you learn about their experience, the attempt to find a way to fit in. And identity issues are particularly strong for those kids. And in the course of the series, you find out that the parents of these kids, their own struggles with just even getting married and what that meant to their respective communities at times was quite tense. And in fact, one of our kids discovers all of this in the course of the filming about the fact that Shanti, whose parents are Vietnamese and African American, finds out that her Vietnamese mom's family really disowned her when she married Franklin, her African American father.
Your own children went to that school. How was their experience different?
Well, you know, this was really where the epiphany for the film came from, which was when my kids were there. I had 3 kids that went to the school, and they had very different experiences. They were in differing tracks. And the fact that I had some high flyer, you know, achievers, as well as you know, a kid who really struggled because of issues around ADD, it really dawned on me that this school is very different depending on where you fall in the pecking order and with the track system. And then it dawned on me, it's like if my kids as white kids were having these kinds of interesting struggles, what must it be like for black kids who have been historically treated unfairly?
We're almost out of time, but while we've got you here, you've made everything from Hoop Dreams to a documentary about Roger Ebert, and now America to Me. What's next for Steve James?
Well, I can't really talk too much about it yet.
That's a good tease.
But we are filming here in Chicago, and it's underway, and it's you know, we're looking at the city, which I hope is through a kind of interesting lens. How about that?
I am dying to find out what it is when you come back. Thank you for joining us, Steve James.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back with more in a moment, so stay right there.
Don't miss a Chicago Tonight story. Get them all delivered to your desktop or mobile device with a subscription to our morning newsletter. Go to WTTW.com/Chicago Tonight email and sign up.
An enduring local mystery has evolved into an art show with global reach. 27 years ago, a suburban couple found a box of photographs at an estate sale. Those photos, taken in 1945 by a U.S. serviceman, have now inspired a gallery of artwork made by contemporary artists from India. Jay Shefsky recently brought us this story. Here's another look.
At the Loyola University Museum of Art, the works currently on view were inspired by a collection of photographs. Pictures that were found in a shoebox under a couch at an estate sale.
We pulled out the shoebox, and inside we found these brown envelopes that had negatives, 4x5-inch negatives, the professional press photographer negatives, and vintage prints stapled to them. There were 127 of them in the box. They were gorgeous photographs, just gorgeous, of temples and portraits and just very, very cool stuff. We still don't know who the photographer is.
But we did find out through our research that they were taken at the Salua Air Base, which is in Kharagpur, which is just a little bit southwest of Kolkata. And in 1945, the Americans had a secret air base there. And that's where a lot of the B-29 bombers would come and get refueled and get serviced, and then they would load up bombs and go to Japan.
The couple spent months in India researching the photographs, and they dreamed up an artful idea.
And we thought, wouldn't it be interesting if we took these photographs and placed them in front of some Indian artists and say, well, you respond to them. You know, what do you think? What is it about these images that captures you? We collected a group of 10 Indian artists that were all Bengali.
Right. We decided to stay in that area because that's where they were from. And so we just kept building this up and began to work with these artists who then developed their own interpretations of these photographs. And that's really the key of this whole thing, is that it wasn't just, oh, we found these cool photos and we're showing the photos. The idea is that we found the photos, we're bringing them back to the subjects, and we're saying, well, what do you think about this?
The works are amazing, and I was really excited about the different types of works shown in the exhibit. I mean, one of the things people don't understand in India is it's not this monolithic culture. It's very, very layered, it's very diverse, and my students don't get that. But when they come and see this, they're floored.
What was so marvelous about this is the variety of responses. No two people saw the same thing. Everybody responded in a different way. They used their own artistry and their own abilities and their own personal histories in order to tell those stories.
Works range from large-scale installations with video to graphic arts, to traditional folk paintings. The curators included works of their own among the contributions of the 10 contemporary Indian artists. Of course, some of the 127 photos that inspired the project are also on view. They were taken by a photographer with an empathetic eye.
So here we have someone giving a connection with the people, trying to show an everyday life, not some sensationalist nonsense. So he lacks that colonial gaze. It has that power structure in there. But then bringing the photographs back to the artist, it's kind of like flipping the narrative. That gives the artist so much agency. Like they're allowed to interpret that instead of having the West interpret them.
Following the box of photographs has led to an intriguing art show. But one question remains: the identity of the photographer.
We solved the mystery of where it was taken, but we didn't solve the mystery of who he was or why, he took these photos.
Which is just an amazing
And if
story.
only we can find his relatives to just to say to them,
Look what this guy did.
You have affected thousands of lives.
We found this at an estate sale, in a shoebox, under a couch. And the message really is that there are great hidden stories everywhere, just everywhere. You just have to take the time to look.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Jay Shefsky.
And the exhibition is called Following the Box. It was previously on view at 2 museums in India. Now it is in Chicago at LUMA, the Loyola University Museum of Art, through October 20th. There is more to see on our website. And now to Phil Ponce and some timely questions about how we all write. Phil.
Do you regularly use exclamation points when texting and writing email? When someone responds to you without an exclamation point, do they sometimes come across as cold and abrupt? A recent story in the Wall Street Journal examined what it called the feeling of email and text anxiety caused by the new tyranny of the exclamation point. It's a topic that's been touched upon in modern life, even making its way into popular culture.
Now, what is it?
It's nothing.
Tell me.
Well, I was just curious why you didn't use an exclamation point.
Why have you chosen brown and gray balloons? They match the carpet. What is that? It is your birthday period.
It's a statement of fact.
Not even an exclamation point?
This is more professional. It's not like she discovered a cure for cancer.
Here to talk about the exclamation point phenomenon is Randall Iden. He's faculty director for the Master of Science in Communication program at Northwestern University. He teaches a program focused on strategic communication in organizations. Randall Iden, welcome to Chicago Tonight. And
Thank you.
how do you react to these reports of exclamation point anxiety?
Well, we're living it every day. You see people struggling to try to put the new communication formats into perspective and to both code and decode the messages that we have to use, especially in the workplace with people that we're trying to impress or please.
So as part of the work you do, you review a lot of emails and a lot of texts. You trying to understand how organizations communicate with each other. To what extent has the exclamation point sort of seeped its way into business communication?
Quite a bit. I'm thinking about the exclamation point. I decided that the exclamation point was really the first emoji. Punctuation was designed to give an indication, especially for someone who was speaking, where to stop, what kind of approach to give to a particular sentence or phrase. And so the exclamation point was designed to show stress or emphasis. But eventually it bled to the point where people now use it to express emotion. And so you can have a message that's just made up of exclamation points or a single exclamation point.
That's true. I've seen those. I think we all have. Do you think people feel peer pressure to respond in kind when someone sends a message with an exclamation point?
Absolutely. And in fact, we're in the middle of a huge arms race in exclamation points, because if somebody sends you 2 and you only send back 1, then you're going to look bad. So you got to go 2, and then you have to decide when it's time to use 3, and you'll see sometimes even in business communication as many as 5 or 6 exclamation points for a particular message.
So what does this do to the poor period in terms of how it comes across?
The poor period can sometimes actually be seen as an abrupt message. The Wall Street Journal article mentioned, and I've seen this in other places as well, that sometimes getting a message from a boss that only has a period on it, you feel like you're going to be fired. You feel like you're in trouble. They don't like what you're doing. So the period sometimes now seems like the consolation prize to the punctuation lottery.
I have to say that on the few occasions it seems that I get a message that just has a period, I do get the feeling, oh, the person, is there something wrong?
Yes.
Did I say something to offend this person? But give us a quick refresher course on punctuation. When is an exclamation point, according to the old rules, when is it supposed to be used?
So an exclamation point is there to indicate that something should be stressed. And so it's when you're reading something and you see that there's an exclamation point, that tells you, and in Spanish, of course, they give us the hint at the beginning, the upside down exclamation point that tells us this is going to be something that we stress. And so you say that with a little bit more forcefulness. If you're saying this has to be there on time, then that gives you the sense that this is something that's important. It doesn't necessarily, punctuation doesn't need to indicate emotion. And so therefore it doesn't have to have grades of emotion, which would be signified by more than one exclamation point. I've seen the same thing happen now with question marks. Is that sometimes, in fact, I have a good friend whose boss always sends emails with 2 question marks before, after a question. And the idea of the 2 question marks seems to indicate that this is something that's puzzling, that maybe you're in trouble, that maybe there's something wrong with this. So this idea of doubling up on punctuation, I think really goes to the fact that we're now used to, because of texting, to use emojis or emoticons, that emotion has to be brought into the message, which should actually be used with the language. The language is there to express what we're trying to communicate. The punctuation is just there to put the brackets on it, to show us where it begins and ends.
Okay, once upon a time, if you were taking a course in composition, what was the rule, and how frequently were you expected to use an exclamation point?
Those of us of a certain age were always taught by our teachers in composition, and I think composition teachers probably still teach the same thing today. Exclamation points are to be used sparingly. You should be pruning them out of all of your writing as much as possible. Something that's written with, and one of the things that you'll see now in messages, email messages that you'll get, is not so much even that there's multiple exclamation points in a particular sentence, but every sentence has an exclamation point. And so and the same thing with capital letters, you're getting messages now that are coming in so hot that you can't really react to them. So the idea would be to, especially in business communication, especially in more formal communication, prune your exclamation points. Use fewer and use them only when you're indicating some particular kind of emphasis for that sentence, not to try to express your emotion.
Given this arms race, what do you see as the future of the exclamation point?
The future looks bleak, just like with the real arms race. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I think that, what I would hope would happen is that as people tell their toddlers that they would learn to use their words to express themselves and their punctuation to simply show where the conversation is supposed to be punctuated.
Randall Iden, thank you so much for coming by. Next time we'll have you on to talk about the increased use of smiley faces.
Smiley faces.
And you can visit our website for more tips on punctuation in work-related correspondence. Back with more right after this.
And that's our show for this Monday night, period. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily e-alert and join us tomorrow night live at 7. Now that Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings are over, what's next? Senator Dick Durbin on the Supreme Court nominee and more. And meet the woman many call the greatest female athlete of all time, Illinois' own Jackie Joyner-Kersee. Now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Closed captioning for this program is brought to you by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices. Bob Clifford is on the board of overseers of the Rand Institute for Civil Justice, a think tank in California.